September 22, 1956, a 9-year-old boy named Tommy sat on a Memphis street corner playing a guitar he'd made from a cardboard box in rubber bands. When Elvis Presley walked by and heard him, what happened next changed not just that afternoon, but the entire trajectory of that child's life. Memphis in September 1956 was buzzing with pride. Their hometown boy, Elvis Presley, had become the biggest star in America. His face was on every magazine cover, his voice on every radio station. He'd gone from driving a truck to being on national television in less than 2 years. For most people in Memphis, Elvis represented the impossible dream coming true. But for 9-year-old Tommy Morrison, Elvis represented something different. He represented hope that maybe, just maybe, music could be a way out of the life Tommy was living. Tommy had been living at the Memphis Children's Home for 3 years, ever since his mother died, and no relatives could be found to take him in. His father had disappeared years before Tommy was born. The orphanage was clean, and the staff was kind, but it was still an institution, still a place where Tommy felt more like a number than a person. The one thing that made Tommy feel like himself was music. Specifically, Elvis's music. When Elvis sang, Tommy heard something that spoke directly to his soul. The energy, the emotion, the way Elvis could make you feel everything he was feeling. It was magic to Tommy. But Tommy had no money for a real guitar. The orphanage had one guitar that all the kids shared, but there were 50 children and only one instrument. Tommy got maybe 15 minutes a week to actually hold it. And that wasn't nearly enough. So Tommy did what poor kids have done forever when they want something they can't afford. He made his own. He found a sturdy cardboard box behind a grocery store, the kind that held canned goods. He carefully cut a hole in the center shaped like the sound hole on a real guitar. He fashioned a neck from a piece of wood he found in the alley, sanding it smooth with a brick until his hands ached. He strung it with rubber bands he'd collected, stretching them tight across the box. He even drew frets on the neck with a pencil, counting the spaces carefully to match the guitar at the orphanage. It didn't sound like a real guitar. The rubber bands made a dull twang when he plucked them. But if Tommy closed his eyes and imagined hard enough, if he moved his fingers the way he'd seen guitar players move theirs, if he sang along, it almost felt real. Every Saturday, Tommy would take his cardboard guitar and sit on the corner of Beale Street, not far from where he'd heard Elvis used to perform when he was starting out. Tommy wasn't there to beg for money, though people sometimes dropped coins in front of him. He was there because it made him feel closer to his dream, closer to the music that made sense of everything confusing in his life. On this particular Saturday, Tommy was sitting in his usual spot, his cardboard guitar across his lap. He'd gotten brave enough to sing while he played, quietly at first, but gradually louder as he got lost in the music. Today he was working on a song that meant everything to him. One that he'd heard so many times on the orphanage radio that he knew every word, every pause, every breath. He was singing about tender love and promises, about never letting go, about making dreams last as long as the stars in the sky. The song that had become synonymous with Elvis, the one that showed he could be tender as well as wild. Elvis closed his eyes as he played, his fingers moving across the drawn-on frets, the rubber bands making their quiet sounds that only he could really hear. But in his imagination, it sounded beautiful. In his imagination, he was on stage in front of thousands of people, playing a real guitar, making real music, being someone who mattered. He finished the song, his voice trailing off on the last note, and opened his eyes to find someone standing in front of him. Not just someone, Elvis Presley. Tommy's heart stopped. He literally felt it stop for a moment, then start again, pounding so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. Elvis Presley was standing 3 feet away from him, looking down at him with those famous eyes, a slight smile on his face. Elvis had been walking back to his hotel after visiting his mother when he'd heard the singing. A kid's voice. Sweet and pure, singing his song. He'd stopped to listen, and what he'd seen had hit him harder than he expected. A small boy, maybe 9 years old, with clothes that were clean, but obviously too big. Hand-me-downs from the orphanage. And in his hands a cardboard box fashioned into the rough shape of a guitar, rubber bands stretched across it like strings. The kid had been playing it with complete seriousness, with total commitment, like it was the finest instrument in the world. Elvis had stood there silently while Tommy finished the song. And when the boy opened his eyes and saw him, the look on his face, pure shock mixed with joy mixed with fear, took Elvis right back to his own childhood. To being poor in Tupelo, to wanting things he couldn't have, to making do with whatever he could find or make. That was real good, Elvis said quietly, not wanting to spook the kid who looked like he might faint or run away at any second. Tommy opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He tried again. "You're your Elvis Presley?" "That's right," Elvis said, kneeling down so he was at Tommy's eye level. "And who are you?" Tommy Morrison, sir." "Well, Tommy Morrison, you've got a nice voice. And that's a mighty interesting guitar you've got there." Tommy felt his face flush with embarrassment. His cardboard guitar suddenly seemed so pathetic, so childish. Here was Elvis Presley, who played real guitars, beautiful guitars that probably cost more than Tommy could imagine. And Tommy was sitting here with a cardboard box and rubber bands. "I know it's not real," Tommy said, his voice small. "But I don't have money for a real one, so I made this. It doesn't sound right, but it helps me practice the finger positions, and I can sing along. And sometimes if I close my eyes, I can almost pretend." His voice trailed off. He sounded stupid. Elvis Presley didn't want to hear about his pretend guitar and his make-believe dreams. But Elvis wasn't looking at Tommy like he was stupid. Elvis was looking at the cardboard guitar with an expression Tommy couldn't quite read. Sad maybe, or thoughtful, or both. "Can I see it?" Elvis asked gently. Tommy handed it over, watching anxiously as Elvis examined his handiwork. Elvis ran his fingers over the cardboard, felt the tension of the rubber bands, looked at the carefully drawn frets. "You made this yourself?" Elvis asked. "Yes, sir. It's really well done. You put a lot of work into this." "I wanted it to be as close to real as I could make it," Tommy said. Elvis plucked one of the rubber bands, and it made its dull twang. He smiled, but it wasn't a mocking smile. It was a smile of recognition, of understanding. "You know what I see when I look at this?" Elvis said, still holding the cardboard guitar. "I see someone who wants to make music so bad that they'll find a way no matter what. That's the most important thing, Tommy, not having the fanciest equipment or the most expensive guitar. The most important thing is having the music inside you and needing to get it out." Tommy felt tears starting to form in his eyes. Elvis Presley understood. He actually understood. "Where do you live, Tommy?" "Memphis Children's Home." "I'm an orphan, sir." Something shifted in Elvis's expression when Tommy said that. A look of deep sadness, of empathy, of understanding that went beyond just music. "Your folks?" Elvis asked gently. "My mama died 3 years ago. I never knew my daddy." Elvis was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "I lost my twin brother when we were born. And my mama, she's the most important person in my world. I can't imagine." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Tommy understood. "Wait here," Elvis said suddenly, standing up. "Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back." And then he was gone, walking quickly down the street, leaving Tommy sitting there holding his cardboard guitar and wondering if he dreamed the whole thing. But 10 minutes later, Elvis came back. And he wasn't alone. He had a man with him carrying a guitar case. A real guitar case. "Tommy," Elvis said. "This is my friend Charlie. Charlie, this is Tommy Morrison, and he's about to get his first real guitar." Charlie opened the case, and Tommy's breath caught in his throat. Inside was a beautiful acoustic guitar, the wood gleaming, the strings perfect and new. It was the most beautiful thing Tommy had ever seen. "This is for you," Elvis said. Tommy couldn't speak. He just stared at the guitar, unable to believe this was happening. "Go ahead," Elvis said gently. "Pick it up." With trembling hands, Tommy lifted the guitar from its case. It was heavier than his cardboard one, solid and real in a way that made his heart race. He held it carefully, like it might break, like it might disappear if he wasn't careful enough. "That's just the beginning," Elvis said. And there was something in his voice that made Tommy look up at him. "Charlie here is going to teach you how to play properly. Real lessons twice a week for as long as you want them. And I'm going to make sure you've got everything else you need, too." Tommy's eyes went wide. "I don't understand." Elvis knelt down again, looking Tommy in the eye. "Tommy, I grew up poor. Really poor. I know what it's like to want something so bad you can taste it but not have any way to get it. I know what it's like to make do with whatever you can find. But you know what? Someone helped me when I was getting started. A few people believed in me and gave me chances I wouldn't have had otherwise. And now that I can help someone else, I'm going to." "But why me?" Tommy asked, now tears flowing freely down his face. "Because you made a guitar out of a cardboard box," Elvis said simply. "Because you sat on a street corner singing your heart out even though all you had were rubber bands for strings. Because you've got the music in you, Tommy. And that's something special. That's something worth nurturing." Elvis reached out and took the cardboard guitar from where it sat next to Tommy. He pulled out a marker from his pocket and wrote something on the cardboard, then handed it back to Tommy. "Keep this," Elvis said. "Keep it to remember where you started. Keep it to remember that it's not about what you have. It's about what's inside you. And years from now, when you're making your own music, you'll look at this and remember the day a cardboard guitar changed your life." Tommy looked at what Elvis had written in bold letters across the cardboard. It said to Tommy Morrison, "Never stop making music. Your friend, Elvis Presley." Over the next few weeks, Tommy discovered that Elvis hadn't just given him a guitar and some lessons. Elvis had quietly arranged for Tommy's care at the orphanage to be fully funded. He'd set up an education fund for when Tommy was old enough for college. He'd made sure Tommy would have everything he needed, not just for music, but for life. Elvis never publicized what he'd done. There were no news stories, no photo opportunities. This wasn't about making himself look good. This was about genuinely helping a kid who reminded him of himself. Charlie, the guitar teacher Elvis had hired, came to the orphanage twice a week to teach Tommy. Within months, Tommy was playing well enough to perform at orphanage events. Within a year, he was teaching other kids at the home how to play. The cardboard guitar signed by Elvis, Tommy kept safe in his small locker at the orphanage. He'd take it out sometimes and look at it. Remember that September day when Elvis Presley had stopped to listen to him sing, had seen past the poverty and the makeshift instrument to the music in Tommy's heart. Tommy never became famous. He didn't grow up to be a rock star or a recording artist, but he did grow up to be a music teacher. He taught for 40 years in Memphis public schools, working primarily with kids from poor families, kids who couldn't afford instruments or lessons. And every year on the first day of class, Tommy would show his students his cardboard guitar, tell them the story of the day Elvis Presley heard him playing on a street corner, and remind them that music isn't about having the most expensive equipment or coming from the right background. "Music is about what's in here," Tommy would say, pointing to his heart. "Everything else you can find a way to make work." Many years later, when Elvis died, Tommy was devastated. He wrote a letter to Graceland, probably one of thousands they received, thanking Elvis for what he'd done, for seeing a poor orphan kid with a cardboard guitar and choosing to change his life. He never knew if anyone at Graceland read his letter, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that for one afternoon in September 1956, the biggest star in the world had stopped to listen to a nobody kid singing on a street corner and had decided that kids' dreams were worth investing in. The Story of Elvis and Tommy wasn't widely known during Elvis's lifetime. But decades later, when Tommy was interviewed for a documentary about Elvis's charitable work, he told the story and showed the cardboard guitar, still carefully preserved, still bearing Elvis's signature. The documentary crew asked if they could film it, and Tommy agreed. When that segment aired, it went viral. People around the world were moved by the image of that homemade guitar, by the story of a poor kid's dreams and a famous man's kindness. The cardboard guitar eventually ended up donated to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where it sits today with a plaque that reads, "Cardboard guitar made by Tommy Morrison, age 9, Memphis, 1956. Played on the street corner where Elvis Presley heard him and changed his life." A reminder that music lives in the heart, not in expensive instruments. The lesson from Elvis and Tommy's story isn't complicated. It's about seeing people, really seeing them. About recognizing that dreams aren't less valid because they come from people with nothing. About understanding that sometimes the most important thing you can do is believe in someone when no one else does. Elvis Presley gave Tommy a guitar that day. But more than that, he gave him belief in himself. Gave him a future. Gave him the message that he mattered. That a poor orphan kid with a cardboard guitar mattered enough for someone to invest in. And Tommy spent the rest of his life paying that forward, teaching music to kids who couldn't afford lessons, showing them that where you start doesn't determine where you end up, and that sometimes all you need is one person to believe in your cardboard guitar dreams. If this story of compassion, recognition, and investing in potential moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their dreams are valid no matter their circumstances. Have you ever had someone believe in you when you had nothing? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more untold stories about the moments when kindness changes.